back to another AFDA lesson. Today we are going to do Chapter 1, which is just an introduction to solving equations. Now, last class we all practiced this a little bit, but I want everybody to have a little firmer understanding of what we're doing. So, the objective itself is solve an equation. But it's broken down, as you can see. We've got 4 different things we're going to do. The first one, the second one, and the third one are all talking equations, while the fourth one is inequalities, which we'll talk about later. Equations, as we can see, we're really only talking a difference here in the number of steps we need to use to solve. And all of this was done in Algebra 1, so we're just going to briefly review it. Before we get into your notes, here's an example of a very difficult equation that we're going to have to solve. As you can see, I've got a distributive property on each side, so we'll have to take care of that. But in the end, we just want to remember that my answer is going to be n equals some number. And that number is going to be a number that we can come back in here, substitute in, and get 2 things that are equal to each other. And that's all really an equation is. Give me a number that I can plug into n that will substitute in and solve. Now, how do we do that? We go back and we remember the rules for our equal sign. Our equal sign simply means that as long as both sides are equal, I've not messed up the equation. So I can do whatever I want to this side of the equation or to this side, as long as I do that to both sides. And the easiest way to remember, when you guys were probably first taught this, and I didn't see a lot of it early on, is that we're going to draw a little line right down the middle, right through our equal sign, and that's going to be our way to remember, okay, if I'm going to do one thing to one side, I got to do it to both. So, as I go through, the first thing I want to look at are either sides simplified, or can I simplify each side? And in this case, there's a lot I can do. The first thing I see immediately, and we already discussed it, is that I can do a distributive property right here and right here. And what does that look like? Well, I'm going to do 2 times 1, which is 2. And then I'm going to do 2 times 2n, which is 4n. I did not mess with this negative 3n, so I leave that simply as is. Over here, again, I'm going to do negative 2 times 8n. Get negative 16n, and then I'm going to do negative 2 times negative 1 and get a positive 2. Okay, as I look at the right-hand side, I see that there's absolutely nothing I can combine here. However, on this side, I most certainly can. I can combine those 2 like terms and get 4 plus negative 3 is positive 1n. I did not mess with this 2, and I did not mess with any of this. And the whole time we're remembering that this line is still my equal sign. Okay. Now as I look at both sides, this is still in simplest form. This needs some work. Nope, I'm sorry, that's a lie. They're both in simplest form. So now I got to start rearranging terms. Remember, my end result down here, I still want n equals. So I'm going to move this 16n over to this side. And in order to do that, we're going to add it. And as long as I do 16n plus 16n to both sides, I won't have changed my equation. So what does that look like? b is negative 16 plus 16 goes away, and I get 0. Over here, I get 17. I did not touch the 2, so this 2 is still hanging out. Nor did I touch this 2, so that's still hanging out. Then, let's get this guy over to this side. And we do the exact same thing, except now because this is positive 2, I'm going to do a negative 2 to both sides. I'm giving myself a little room to work, because I'm going to get 0. I did not mess with the 17. And I get 0 over here. So as you can see, some stuff has happened. This is fine. Once I simplify out and the zeros are gone, I get 17n equals 0. And for my last step, we're going to divide 17 by both sides. This gives me n equals 0 as my solution, which is perfectly fine. Don't worry about the zeros. Okay, so that in a nutshell is what we're after. Get n equals with a variable equals, and we probably want to come back and check, will that actually work? And I'll talk about that in a bit, but basically we want to substitute this back in. That's going to be a little challenging on this one, because we're going to have to use a few moves in our calculator, but it is easily done. For now, we're good to go. So let's look at your notes now. On the notes, these do go in order, so obviously the first few are easier. How we do notes is very simple. I'm going to do several for you in this video, and then you will be responsible for completing the rest on your own, or with a partner, or ask me questions. So let's just start off on the first page here. Number 1 looks like the easiest, and let's remember that 1a was talking about a one-step equation. So these are all problems that could be solved in one move. And as I look here, the b is already basically by itself there. So all I need to do is get rid of this 10 and move it over to that side. I can draw my line if I want, but because these are a little simpler, we don't tend to worry about it. So to get rid of this negative 10 or positive 10, I do a negative 10 to both sides. I'm left here with my b. And over here, 9 minus 10 is negative 1. Now, the one thing I do want us to get in the habit of, I don't want that to be my answer. I do want you to realize that I can take this value and simply say, if negative 1 is equal to b, I can write that as b equals negative 1. Now, here we do have an opportunity to check it, because it is very simple to check this. I can take my original equation and instead of a b, I can put a negative 1. And when we do substitution, that's exactly what we do, and we want to use parentheses. And we can check that in my calculator and say, is negative 1 plus 10 equal to 9? You bet. That means I'm guaranteed that this is the correct answer. You're going to have plenty of time on your assessments. Get used to checking your answers. All right, let's take a look at number 2, because some stuff's going on. Here's my x, but in this case, that x is negative, so we're going to have to deal with that later. So, when I look at this, let's deal just like the way we did before. We're going to take care of this negative 12 by moving it to the other side. So 6 plus negative 12, sorry, 6 plus 12 is 18. These have now canceled out, and I'm left with negative x. We can use the same idea that if these are like this, we can write them backwards. But we've still got a little work to do here. I want to think of this as negative 1x. Because the number in front of the x, if there is no number, it's just 1. And now, to get rid of that negative, we can divide both times by negative 1. And in essence, all you're doing is moving that minus sign, but now we've got a positive answer. When we come back up here, negative 12 minus negative 18 is in fact positive 6. Okay, as I look at the next page, I see that now they have changed a little bit. These are still one-step equations, but now I've got these divide signs. So, what's going on with the divide signs? How do I get rid of this 16? So that's something we're going to have to think about here, and we'll get back to it in 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. As you were saying, what do I do with that 16? Obviously, I've got to get rid of it. But in this case, I can't add or subtract it. It's on the bottom of a fraction called the denominator. So in order to get rid of it, we've got to do something a little strange, not real strange. We're going to have to multiply both sides by 16. And when I do that, over here, these two 16s will cancel out, because what's really happening here, on this whole side, you're really getting 16m over 16. And we've already discussed that that's going to cancel out. 16 over 16 is 1. On the other side, negative 13 times 16 is negative 208. Because these are already canceled out, there's my solution. And I can check, is negative 208 divided by 16 equal to negative 13? Well, as I plug it in, it is indeed true. So I know negative 208 is my answer. Okay. As we come to the end of this on the next page, these are all the same one-step equations. So, as I look through, I do not see anything that's getting too rough on numbers 1 through 10. I think even with this, we should be able to do that, but I will do that one more time for you here. How do I get rid of the negative 11? Divide both sides by that number. And again, we want to check, is negative 11 times 9 equal to negative 99? And as it turns out, you bet, it is. Okay, take a moment and look at those and complete numbers 1 through 10. We'll come back in another video here in a second where we'll go through the next few. Good luck.